Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar series on the U.S. Civics course. Particularly, we're going to be looking at the first section of the political process lesson, the fourth lesson in U.S. Civics, and focusing on the citizenship of the United States. My name is Paul. I am one of the social studies instructors here at Penn Foster. A few quick ways of being able to contact us beyond the webinars, beyond this hour or this half hour or so of the presentation. Best way to be able to contact us. Here we have our phone number. There is an instructor line. I believe it's usually option 5 that you can choose and be able to be directed right to our Penn Foster Education Department. We also can be reached by email using your help and support page on your website. We do also have both live help and webinars. They are brought up, or they are announced to you guys on basically mainly on your message center. Each of our courses, or many of our courses, do offer either both live help and webinars. So keep an eye on those schedules. They'll be coming out for next month, for the month of September. Should be coming out in the next week or so. So you're able to find out exactly all the help that's available from myself and the rest of the education department. A couple of the other ways to be able to get in contact with us: we do have a texting service. If you text LEARN to 39033, again, a member of our educational staff will be able to answer any questions that you have through that. And also an appointment scheduler. If you're having any difficulties with your course, if you want to either text, send an email, you can even call and say, I really need some additional help. I would really like to be able to set up an appointment with a member of the education department or an instructor for a specific course. We're more than happy to help you out. So please be aware of all these different resources, these ways that we're available. Myself, the rest of the educational team is available. In terms of the objectives, in terms of what we're looking to accomplish during our webinar today, looking at types of citizenship, as well as the process of becoming a citizen. Many people who come here legally into the United States, we do have a process of legalization and citizenship. We'll be able to look at the rights that the Constitution includes for citizens, as well as sort of diving into voting, and in particular, reasons people don't vote. Voting is really a basic right and responsibility in the United States and other democracies and republics around the world. And it's really important that people do vote. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about some of the reasons that people typically give when they don't want to vote or choose not to vote. So the first kind of big question is the idea of what is citizenship. We talk about it a lot in today's America and today's world. What does it mean to be a citizen? What is a citizen of the country or of the world? And it really comes down to the idea that was first talked about within our Constitution or within our Declaration of Independence when we claimed independence from Great Britain. And Thomas Jefferson and philosophers before him really talked of the basics of citizenship is the ability to have life, liberty, and property, or the pursuit of happiness, as Jefferson spoke or wrote back in 1776. And according to our Constitution, these are absolute rights. Life, liberty, property are absolute rights of Americans and of citizens. And citizens are not able to lose these rights only when there's due process of law. So if you are legally found guilty of a crime, is the only time that the basic rights of life, liberty, property can be taken away. That's the only option for a citizen to lose these basic rights. And in terms of types of citizens, we do have two main types. The first kind is a natural born citizen. someone who is born automatically, who is born within the United States or within territories. These also include military bases. So folks like John McCain, who was born on a um, naval base, is considered a U.S. citizen primarily because, as part of the territory, basically on U.S. soil. And also, you are an American citizen. You're a natural-born citizen if your parents are also citizens. So even if you are born outside the country, as long as your parents are American citizens, you are automatically given that citizenship. The other form of citizenship is called naturalized citizen. So someone who becomes a citizen. We'll talk about a little bit more in a second, but it's those who are given sponsorship. So American citizens are giving this person or someone their green light, their check of approval, saying yes, this person is good to be a citizen, should be a citizen. And this idea of a naturalized citizen or people who become citizens has really come under kind of a lot of scrutiny over the last perhaps year, but really even longer than that. We've been having debates on naturalized citizens who should become citizens for quite a while. Way back in the 1980s, when our immigration laws were attempted to be fixed. Immigration policies tried to be fixed. Still, we have issues. Still, we have problems with illegal immigration and figuring out naturalized citizen status. And this brings us to our first poll question. One second, I'm sorry. So according to the Constitution, life, liberty, and property can't be taken away without what? Trial of peers, due process, or by naturally born citizens. When can life, liberty, and property be taken away? What's the only option that people can lose their life, liberty, and property? Give you guys about another 5 seconds. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. So it is by due process. So the citizenship, if I'm a citizen and I have life, liberty, and property as an American citizen, the only time that can be taken away from me as a basic right as an American is by due process of law. If I'm convicted of a crime, that's when I can start losing life, liberty, and property. Not all of these are taken away, obviously, at once or based on a crime. Very, very few people in this country lose, for instance, the basic right of life. Our death penalty is only based on the worst of offenders, worst of crimes. Property and liberty, many people lose parts of their liberty when they've been convicted. For instance, felons, those who are convicted of federal crimes, are not able to vote anymore. So even though they have other rights as citizens, they are not able to vote. That's because they went through due process. They were convicted by a federal jury. And through that due process, they lost that liberty. They lost that ability to vote in elections. So yeah, it is this due process of law that is the only way that citizens can lose that life, liberty, and property. Also, if you do have questions as we go along, feel free to post those questions. I'll also have some time at the very end to be able to answer those questions for you. So we've talked about the types of citizens. Now for naturalized citizens, there is a process. There are steps that have to be taken in order for someone to become a citizen. You don't just automatically get to be one at a certain point. So the first step are meeting. You have to meet certain automatic qualifications. So anyone who starts going through the process of becoming a citizen have to make these requirements first. These basic requirements. First is a green card. So typically someone who has a green card is going to be someone who is here for a job, here for other responsibilities, not just showing up. And also has to have been in the country for at least 5 years. They have to have good moral character, so have to be recommended. So basically the last mention of sponsorship for a naturalized citizen, that's where the sponsorship comes in through. That a sponsor, that an American citizen is saying this person has moral character, has good moral character. There has to be a basic knowledge of the English language. They have to be at least 18 years old. And they also have to pass a basic knowledge exam on U.S. history and American government. So once these basic qualifications are met, that is when a person is able to fill out a INS application. The Immigration Naturalization Service has an application that people have to fill out in order to apply to become a U.S. citizen. Once they get that application, and that's a granted application, the applicant then has to go through getting background checks and other things, and along with fingerprinting to be able to verify that they are good moral standard, haven't been convicted or convicted of crimes, things of that nature. There's then an interview by INS. They have to make sure that, again, they're verifying all the qualifications. They're verifying the application information. Once a person goes through these steps, that is when they are invited to a citizenship ceremony. And that is done across the country. That people are, it's essentially a swearing in ceremony of becoming a citizen. And that brings us to our next poll question. So once the initial or basic qualifications are met by a soon-to-be citizen or want-to-be citizen, what government agency has then provides the application? Is it the IRS, the INS, or the NSA? Give you guys 10 seconds. Finishing up in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. So it is the INS, again, the Immigration Naturalization Service, the INS. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, collects taxes once a year. The NSA, the National Security Agency, is the department or the organization within our federal government that monitors our national security. So that is how someone becomes a citizen. Once you become a citizen, either by naturalization or being natural born, you have certain rights. You automatically get a number of rights. And all of them, or most of them, I should say, come out of the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Among them, the First Amendment is sort of the one that is most often noted as having the rights for citizens, including free speech. This is something that came up quite a bit in the last week or so. Every citizen has the right to free speech. Everyone has the right to be able to speak out and say what's on their mind, or say, make their opinions known. The questions that always come up with the right of speech, the freedom of speech, is how much where do we come to the amount of speech someone can say without inciting violence? You're not able to incite violence, and you're not able to cause violence. So the famous example that our Supreme Court gave is that free speech does not allow you to yell fire in a crowded theater or a crowded room. That is not free speech. That causes violence. That causes that causes people to get hurt. And the debate that's going on today, or in recent years, is exactly how much does hate speech lead to violence? How much does hate speech? How much do marches by the KKK, Nazis, groups like those? How much do those groups cause hatred? And even on the far left, how do the protests by the group called the Weathermen back in the 1960s? They had protests, but they were very violent as well. They wanted to overthrow the government in order to create a different society because of the Vietnam War. So how much speech are those groups able to have? Another right within the First Amendment is the freedom of religion. It has two parts to it. The first one is called the Establishment Clause, which means that a person that the federal government is not able to establish a formal religion of the United States. The second one, or favor a particular religion. The other one is a free exercise, that the government cannot stop someone from freely exercising their religion. Freedom of the press. So having a free press, a press that can write stories, look for information, look for facts. That is not something the federal government can stop. Any government can stop. People also have the right to assemble. So this kind of goes back to the freedom of speech idea. So if a group of members of the KKK are getting together, they are allowed to do so because of the First Amendment right to free assembly. People also have the right to petition. There are a lot of petitions that people put online or by emails, asking people to sign on this petition for this cause, or a concern about the president, a concern about Democrats, a concern about certain rights or certain laws. There are a lot of petitions that come out, and everyone has the right to be able to start a petition or to sign a petition based on the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Our Second Amendment also gives the right to bear arms, so people are able to keep guns in their homes as part of either their own protection of others. Our Fourth Amendment, the next few amendments kind of get into the rights of accused citizens. So those who are accused of crimes, these are the rights that our Constitution makes sure that people have. So first off is the right to not have your property or yourself searched or have anything seized without due process. That in order for the police or for any policing agency to go into someone's property or go into someone's vehicle, they either have to have a warrant from a judge or what's called probable cause. There has to be a reason for them going into a person's property. The Fifth Amendment does require what's called a grand jury, that in order for a prosecutor to collect evidence, there has to be a grand jury of peers. So other citizens have to get together and agree that a prosecutor or a police should be collecting certain type of evidence. The Fifth Amendment also denies double jeopardy. What double jeopardy means is that if you are accused of a crime and the police collect evidence and the prosecution, a district attorney agrees that they are going to bring charges against you, if you're arrested for that crime, if you are found innocent, if you are found that there's not either enough evidence to convict you, or that you are able to give a defense that says, no, I didn't do that, or there's enough reason to believe that I didn't do that, the prosecution and the police basically cannot touch you for that crime. They cannot go back and say, oh, well, what about this? We found this extra evidence, or, oh, well, we forgot to mention this evidence. They're not able to do that. Once you're acquitted of a crime, found innocent of a crime, you're not able to be charged with that crime again. That really puts a burden on police and on district attorneys or prosecutors to make sure that they have as much evidence, all the evidence that they possibly can get in order to have someone arrested or tried for a crime. The Fifth Amendment also goes over eminent domain, that the federal government can seize property if it's under the common good. Another right of accused citizens is also the Sixth Amendment, which requires a fair and speedy trial and requires that if you are arrested, you have the right to know what your charges are. So when you go into a court, you should be able to have a court hearing as soon as you can. So this doesn't allow for district attorneys to arrest someone and then say, well, we're going to keep on collecting evidence now. They have to be ready as soon as the arrest happens, and they have to say, these are the charges that we are bringing against this person. So there are no surprises. There's no delay by the prosecution saying, well, we're not quite ready yet. So again, this is another amendment that puts a lot of burden on police and on prosecutors, on district attorneys, to make sure that they are ready for trial and that they have all the evidence they need to convict someone, or that they believe that they convict someone. A couple of other rights. The other big one that the study unit talks about and is partially in exams is the 14th Amendment. This was the amendment that was passed after the Civil War. The 13th Amendment gave people eliminate slavery in the country, basically made slavery unconstitutional. The 14th Amendment then gave the rights of citizenship to all former slaves in the country. The third, sort of what's called the Civil War amendments, was the 15th Amendment, which gave African American men the right to vote. But the 14th Amendment really expanded the rights of citizens to all folks, all people who were born in the United States or became naturalized citizens. Eventually, in the civil rights era of the 1960s and 1970s, the 14th Amendment was further adapted, was further interpreted as expanding rights to the states, to state governments. So until the 1960s, it was really the federal government that was forced to follow the Bill of Rights. With the reinterpretation in the 1960s, the Supreme Court said that actually all governments must believe or follow the state constitution, or I'm sorry, the Bill of Rights. So all state governments, all local governments must protect the people, must protect freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, as well as all the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. For many of the states, particularly in the South, the segregation era in the South tried to limit the rights of former slaves, of African Americans, as part of state law. And with the 14th Amendment, with the expansion of those rights by the Supreme Court in the 1960s, states were no longer able to do that. They had to have a jury of peers. They had to give African American defendants the same rights as white defendants. The U.S. Constitution also provides the right of ex partition, meaning that people have the right to refuse their citizenship, denounce their citizenship. So someone who's an American citizen has the right to say, well, I'm not an American citizen anymore. I want to be a citizen of this new country that I'm either going to or have lived there. A little bit more about rights and responsibilities. Are there any questions, actually, before I continue on? Are there any questions about these rights? We talk a lot about the rights of citizens, the rights of Americans. Does anyone have questions about what those rights were, or any follow-up concerns about those? Okay, I'm not seeing questions. Like I said, if you do have other questions, you can certainly type them in as we go along. So moving on to rights and responsibilities of Americans. So as part of the United States, we are all part of a representative democracy. That means we are not directly voting for laws. We're not directly voting for policies. We are electing the people who make those decisions. We are electing our congressmen, our senators, our presidents, our governors, our state representatives. We elect those people in order to represent us. And as part of that representative process, we do hold some responsibilities. The first one being that we are informed, that we look out for what's called political bias. Bias means that what you're saying is based on facts. However, there's sort of a political tilt. There's that you're saying these things, you're making these facts known because they support your political point of view. So, for instance, a Democrat may talk about the fact that President Obama's policies created so many good things. But Republicans might look at other policies that President Obama made and said, well, these were mistakes. These were problems for our economy. These were problems for our different conflicts or different wars. Same thing with President Trump. Republicans will look at positive things, will bring up positive facts. Democrats will talk about negative facts. We'll look at negative things that are going on. It's always important that as you become informed, as you work on being informed, that you are looking for that political bias. Sometimes an author, sometimes even newspaper articles, magazines, all websites will have this sort of political bias. They'll have a political tilt that they want you to believe whatever it is they're saying and want you to agree with whatever positions they have based on the facts that they're talking about. One of the more unbiased, meaning that they are based on facts without a political tilt, is called the Congressional Record. This is a website that states exactly what's going on in the country, what's going on in terms of policies, and like I said, tries to be as unbiased as it can, without tilt, with just stating facts, without trying to convince anyone of a particular point of view. There's also a basic responsibility of contacting representatives and trying to create petitions. So reaching out to congressmen, reaching out to senators, reaching out to the president for in some cases, trying to reach out to members of state or local officials. In many cases, you're able to go to local events that representatives are at. Those are good ways of being engaged, being part of taking advantage of your responsibilities as American citizens. And the most basic responsibility, most basic right of an American citizen is the right to vote. That people who are 18 years old or older, who are citizens, who have lived in the same place for at least a month, and most importantly is registered to vote, have the responsibility to vote. And the big question that many people ask is why people don't vote. Even in this last election in 2016, when there was so much energy on primarily both sides, on both the Democratic side and the Republican side, there was still a low turnout of voters. There were more voters who came out in both the 2008 and 2012 elections than in the 2016 elections in many close states. And so why is it that people don't vote? and the study unit and many websites kind of talk about some of the same topics and reasons. So the first one, feeling uninformed, that there's so much information available, but people are always worried about fake news, that perhaps so much of this is not real. So they don't believe it, so they're not sure, and they don't want to make decisions based on that fake news, based on things that they can't necessarily verify or don't have time to verify. People also talk about that neither option is are good options. You can easily point to last year's presidential election. They're both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump had very high unfavorables. Both had very high negatives in terms of what people thought of them. And in the case of the election, it basically came down to who had the worst or who had the last bit of bad news. And because Hillary Clinton, the FBI investigation of her emails was sort of popped up again at the very end of the election, that was sort of that last bit of bad news. And more people who were still concerned about both candidates sort of decided to go with the eventual President Trump, saying, well, he seems to be doing better. He seems to be doing more than Hillary Clinton. People are also very cynical to government, cynical of how much government can do. A general lack of trust, as it were, that people do not believe that the government is really doing everything it can to benefit Americans. Also, the idea, and this has been around for a long time, this idea that no single vote is going to matter. But we've had a lot of close elections. This last election in 2016 at the presidential level, some of the close states, the states of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Florida, all came down to a few hundred votes, a few thousand votes. And those can add up. Those people who didn't decide to vote could have swayed the election, could have changed the outcome in some of those closer elections. Colorado and Virginia were other really close elections that got a lot closer because not as many people voted as were expected. People also looking at the political parties themselves, both the Republicans and Democrats. The parties themselves are very unpopular. People are generally frustrated with both political parties and how they're not accomplishing their goals. And then finally, just the ability, as I mentioned, one of the basic requirements of voting is registering to vote. And in some states, in many states around the country, there is laws in place that are sort of limiting registration, putting what's required to register to vote, what's required to come to a voting booth and actually voting. So general barriers being created that people are seeing these barriers, seeing these registration laws, and with all the other reasons not to vote, more and more people decided not to vote in this election and a few of the past elections as well, because of how hard it was and how hard it's been to vote in some of these elections. So a lot of different things happening within our political process, within basic citizenship of the country. Are there any questions that you have about this material or anything that's either covered within this study unit in the political process or in other lessons within U.S. Civics? Not seeing questions currently. I will stay online for another 10 minutes or so. I want to thank you all for attending and participating in the polls and so on. So if you do have questions, let me know. Also, you will receive a recording of this webinar tomorrow afternoon. And with that, you'll also get a link to the appointment scheduler that I mentioned at the beginning. That if you have questions about the U.S. Civics course, you can certainly use that scheduler link to be able to ask questions. So thank you all for attending. And like I said, I will stay online for a few more minutes if you do have questions. Thank you so much.